Hi, and welcome to season 4 of Speak Greasy. This season is all about championing the superwomen in the F&B industry. And today, my guests are three stalwarts of the PR machinery behind restaurants. Welcome to the show. I have Tripti Bhatia Gandhi, Shugair Merchant Doshi, and Digisha Shah.
Thank you.
Welcome. And it's so
Thank
great
you
to
for
have
having
you.
us.
So let's start with, just hearing all about your personal journeys and how you've got to where you have. So Tripti, go for it.
I think I got into PR around 18 years ago. I always knew I wanted to do PR. And in general, I love hospitality. So it's something that came very naturally to me. So when I started my own agency, I wanted to be that one-stop agency that kind of did everything for a brand. Because at that point, it was an advertising agency, a PR agency, or a marketing agency. So I wanted to be that one point agency that did it all. So that's how Details came into being. It's been 14 years of Details now. And I think food has come very naturally to us. It's been all word of mouth. And every time I manifested a client, I went to a restaurant and I said, I love this restaurant. I wish I got a chance to work on it. It somehow came to me as a brand. So that's been a big part of my journey also.
So that's your PR strategy.
That's my PR strategy, just manifesting.
Great. Shugair, what about you?
So I went a very different route from, I think, both these lovely ladies. So I had my journalism degree, then I did law, and then finally, Goom Firke, I have landed up in PR. But I think the real impetus was when we started Pinwheel Project, we were working with 150 brands in the kids space. And every day someone would call me up and be like, can I pick your brain over coffee? How do I market my brand? How do I market my brand? And I would do it because I just love being a part of every startup story, and I wanted to know more, and how, I was like, you can do this, you can do that. And finally, all my friends were like, you need to charge for this. You can't give free advice and go for free coffees. What is wrong with you? So I said, fine. And that's how the leap sort of started. And restaurant space just kind of happened because a lot of the restaurateurs were friends. So they were the first ones to come to me and say, I want you on board. Secondly, my husband is a real obsessed foodie. Our restaurants are booked before our flights are booked in any country in the world.
Digisha, what about you?
So for me, the journey with marketing started very, very early. When I was about 18 in college, I was a part of Red Bull's marketing team. And that's when I was introduced to what marketing is, especially in the F&B space. And I was like, I ain't going anywhere else. I think I've found my space. I worked at 2 agencies before I started on my own when I was about 22. And my first client was an F&B client, and it was one of the most iconic restaurants I think in Bombay I've seen, was Zenzi. And the kind of learnings, exposure, it was a different culture, I would say, altogether at that time. And there was no looking back from there after Zenzi. Like when we started, PR was all about the stack of magazine and newspaper every day, and that was
Making dockets.
Yeah, making dockets, and that our world revolved around that. There was nothing like online, nothing. But slowly seeing, PR transition has been interesting. But yeah, that's how it all started, and there's been no looking back since then.
So that's actually leads very well into my next question, which is that, I've been in this business 14 years, and I've seen the transition from print media, which, like you said, it was all about like getting into magazines, newspapers, all those reviewers coming in, all of that. The face of print media has changed significantly, right? So, tell us like what you consider PR today. Are the lines blurred, or is there still a distinction between PR and marketing?
So there is a distinction because PR is about articles, whether it's online or in a print format. But I feel like the lines are blurred in the sense that you can't have one and not have the other.
I agree.
So now it has to be a holistic campaign. You have to have so for example, if it's a launch, I have to think of a strategy for social media, for marketing in terms of, I want to do this, cool launch party idea or this collaboration as part of my launch. And then how do I get the media, whether it's in a print format or an online article or an Instagram format, but what I'm doing basically throughout, like a whole 360-degree format. It can't be just one anymore.
Fair enough, but I guess my question is that are we actually more interested in the social media. Is that the
Yeah.
true PR for a restaurant? Yes, you have to get you want to be covered in certain publications. You want to be, but are people reading that, or are they actually scrolling Instagram, and that's where your real PR is happening, even though that's not traditional PR? What are your thoughts?
So, according to me, I think that today a social media post is considered PR. Today, a social media post on a relevant publication is definitely considered PR, and that's what a lot of restaurateurs want. It's what the people in hospitality want. But do they not want print media? No ways. They still want the print media. Print media is very relevant. People are still reading. Definitely the numbers reduce, but it's very relevant to get that coverage for a client because they want that, and it does drive sales. Till today we see ROI coming from print media, so it's not that it's a dead medium at all, but definitely it's got stiff competition from the easy scrolling, because you're seeing everything now today faster on Instagram than you are from a physical newspaper or a digital newspaper or the newspaper subscriptions that you get in your email box as well. Everything, even a magazine now is giving you headlines on email. But everything is coming to you faster on the scrolling.
You mentioned an interesting point about ROI, right? And I've heard this obviously
Yeah.
when I've had conversations with agencies. How do you actually measure ROI when it comes to a restaurant?
So, I mean, there's no real measure of it. You can't actually measure it. It's not an Instagram post that you can check and see how many likes, what traction, what is the engagement rate. You can't do that with PR. But definitely, I would say, in terms of particular coverage that we've received in print, we've been able to track. People have called, and you get immediate calls to either a restaurant or in an event. If we're doing an event and it's been covered.
So if a brand does well, then you can, even if you have 5 articles, then your ROI is sorted. But if a brand is not doing well after the launch, you can have 500 articles and you're going to get called out by the client for
This
it.
was something I was going to get to, but since you've
All about the restaurant success, and it's not about the number of articles.
so you do believe that at the end of the day you need a product that works.
Yeah.
100%.
Of course you do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when it comes to choosing a brand that you want to work for, right, or work with rather, is there any kind of vetting in a way that you do before you take on a brand?
So I think so far I've taken on brands that I've been more or less familiar with. Either they've been very known and then they've come to us, so we know it already has a reputation for being good in their space. Or we do trials, but we generally do trials once we're on board with them. We can't really like do pre-trials, especially within their opening stage, and then be like, okay, then we'll decide whether you want to come on board or
So
not.
what do you do if you don't think
We
it's
give them like feedback, straight feedback. Hey, this is not going to work. And I don't just do trials alone with me. I like bring my team, I'll bring a
Yeah.
bunch of people, and I'll be like, let also all of us try, and we'll give you consolidated feedback. And be like, listen, 5 things work, 5 things don't work. And we tell them that, okay, now it is out there in front of you.
But I'm going to dig deeper, because what
Yeah.
if they're not receptive to the feedback?
I mean, then they honestly know what to expect, because I feel like with PR, it's not like a magic wand that you get the agency
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
gonna, like convert overnight and things are going to happen. It doesn't work that way.
I'll take that a step further and say you need nothing but good food. I genuinely believe that all the ambience, everything that you have, all of it is great. It gives you a package, it gives you a vibe. But if the food is not good, nobody's coming back. So to me, the food is the most important thing, and that's the reviews that we really collect from people who go. Obviously, we do trials ourselves. The whole team is put together. They go in, they do the trials. If I'm available, I do the trials, and then we give them feedback. And we don't decide just basis a trial. Obviously, we have some background and all of that, but we do say no. But yes, if they're receptive to feedback, if there is a change, if there's a new chef coming on board, there is something happening, then there's a process. But definitely, if the food is what is going to sell a place, that's just how it's going to.
So I have a very simple policy. If it's not a restaurant that I would visit, I can't take it up.
But at what point do you decide that or communicate
Okay,
that?
so usually most of our brands are, we are involved since maybe their naming stage. So very recently, there was a restaurant launch that we were handling, and I'd done the tasting like 2 weeks before it launched. And I basically told the client, I won't put my name to it if you don't change the menu. And I told them what needs to change. And while they were defensive at that point, they changed it overnight. And those are the dishes that sell the most.
Right.
So
The menu change, not the agency.
the menu changed, not the agency, but I'm actually very, very critical about my feedback, like to a point where people get offended. They rather hear it from me than from a guest.
Yeah, but you have to tell them as it is. Yeah.
What's the sort of shift you've seen in terms of how they're communicating about the restaurant, right? So we've been in the world of social media for at least 10 years, and I mean Instagram. I don't know all the other platforms, work as
Yeah.
effectively. Uh, what's the sort of shift you've seen in terms of how there's a joke, maybe it's my joke and a personal joke, but like when I see sort of awards given for most Instagrammable restaurant, I do kind of
It's
have
a
issue with
category.
it.
That's what I'm saying. People go to restaurants for just being able to.
But
put
if
on
a
the
client of yours
gram.
won that, would you be happy about that?
I mean, honestly, because that's their focus, that's their objective. There are some brands who are very clear that, listen, I want to be the most Instagrammable place. I don't care about anything else.
But how does that fit in with your sort of ideology that the food is the primary product here?
But I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Your food can be really good, and many restaurants in Bombay have excellent food. And apart from the food, you also need a vibe, you also need the right location. As she said, all that is important. It's not that I'm saying it's not, but it's secondary, because if your food isn't good and you just have a good vibe, people aren't coming back. So you can be the most Instagrammable restaurant in Bombay. And if the food matches that, then great. You're going to survive and you're going to succeed with or without us. But if your food isn't good, then there's a big disconnect there.
So have you seen a shift in the way chefs are communicating, what they're doing? Like from say when Instagram started, say pre-COVID, let's use that as the sort of milestone in a way. What they were doing before and after. Have you seen a shift?
A lot. Today, I think chefs are putting themselves out there, whether they're comfortable, not comfortable. I've seen chefs who I've been talking to for 3 and 4 years that, hey, you need to face the camera. You need to come in front of the camera. I used to tell them for like media interviews and articles. They were that uncomfortable. And today I'm seeing them on their social,
very
making
active.
conversations.
Yeah,
and they're
100%.
going viral. And we are realizing that that's what people want to see. They're really done with like just your general content that's been coming out. They're going viral. Like, I mean, I have this strategy going on with a client, and on an average, 500,000 views are what we're averaging on each reel. So that just the conversation, people are like, you should start your own show. Oh my God, chef, I love you. There's like a whole fan club that's created.
So I think it's the accessibility also, right? Because like from the second you wake up, everyone's on their phone scrolling. So like even when you were talking about articles, like people don't want to make an effort anymore of buying a magazine.
Or reading.
Or no, they don't mind reading, but it's just that when you have it on your phone, like the same article, you can just click on the link from Instagram and read it. People are not really making that effort anymore. So it's the same thing now. People just want to know what the restaurant is about. So earlier people used to sit and check menus or take that effort. Now people go on the Instagram page of the restaurant.
I think chefs are an integral part of the restaurant story.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as a brand, you're selling a story. That's what people are going to come in for. That's what people buy into in any brand. So the chef's voice is critical. And I'm glad that there's a shift.
Of course, storytelling is the buzzword, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone sort of, that's what everyone says you have to have. Some of these stories feel very
Forced. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, as a sort of, a PR sort of advisor to restaurants, what if there genuinely just isn't a story?
So how you categorize it is, so like for me, for example, I'm like, okay, this is just great food. This has a legacy restaurateur chef. This has an entire celebrity backing. So or this is just an all-day cafe.
No, but even if you have a celebrity backing, which is, we're seeing this, right? Like, I mean, more
A lot
and
of
more,
this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be meeting them. They're not going to be serving
So
me.
you are not the target audience for that. I've also
You can't say that.
No. But Gauri,
am.
I've realized that. So I used to be this way, right? Like I was exactly this person. I'm like, if I don't like it, like I said, if I don't go to this restaurant, no one will. But then I realized that there's a complete different audience for every kind of restaurant.
So if you don't like it, then will you still do it? Because
Yeah.
so there
there
could
is-
be other people who would.
And
so
I've
there's a
realized that.
1% clientele of mine that I've now started maybe taking up because I know there's an audience for it. It might not be a place that I go to, but I have to take it up because of a relationship or because of some other reason, and I'm being honest. But like 99% of the brands are brands that I would like to visit, and that 1% is because I know there's a complete audience I can target, which may not be me.
So you feel like the celebrity angle is strong enough in terms of the storytelling, and it doesn't always have to revolve around the food and the
I've worked with restaurants where, I mean, every single celebrity in the world has gone to that restaurant, and it's done really well because of that for 3 months. But if you don't have a strong food and drink story, it's dead.
I think celebrities can
You
just,
mean
like,
celebrity
highlight-
owned?
No,
Or do you
like,
mean
which is
celebrity owned or celebrity visited?
visited. So like that's the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Like owned and visited is what I'm referring to, because that can only get you maybe going
you
for
a
the
head
first few
start.
months.
It
It'll
gives
get
you a major head start.
a major
For
head
sure.
start for sure, but you can't sustain if you're not
If
like
the
if
food
you don't
isn't
have a
good.
good product for sure. Like max 6 months, and those restaurants will.
So what do you do in that situation where a restaurant is largely driven by the celebrity angle to begin with, and that gets you the eyeballs, at least as far as the first few months is concerned? What do you do after that when, say, the product is falling flat on its face?
So I think you have to have an honest conversation with them, sit them down and say, if this isn't working, because they're the ones who tell us the numbers. We don't know their numbers. They come to us with the numbers and say, look, right now sales are not good, this, that. You sit with them and you tell them we need to pivot, and this is an alternate strategy that we need to take in terms of marketing, in terms of PR, in terms of the on-ground experience, in terms of the menu, in terms of the chef, in terms of the mixologist. Like however we can pivot, we will suggest ways and ideas of sort of picking it up, and we have done that in the past, and
And
it's
if it
worked.
doesn't work, then I guess you
Then it's
You need a client to
it's-
listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they're gonna take the feedback well and it's gonna work, and they do, most of them want to. I mean, why would they not want to get better?
So, speaking of this sort of initial bang, I know you'll send out PR packages, and it's that's a big part of announcing the opening of a restaurant. Does this work? I'm asking very honestly.
It doesn't work for everyone. It works for certain brands. So we never recommend it to every brand. It depends. So for example, if it's an international brand, we recommend it because we know that it'll help in, just creating that extra buzz. Or if there's some story to the brand where it makes sense. But a force fit just because
Yeah.
gifting works, no, we never do that. So like not all our brands do gifting. I'm talking about the restaurants. And it's all you do it for an anniversary, or there's a reason, or there's a collaboration, not always for the launch.
And I think it also depends on the frequency. If you're going to do it every 3 months, people are going to be like, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And people have done that. I've had journalists calling me, influencers calling to not send me anything from this brand. I've had enough. I just don't want it anymore. So it depends on how frequently you do it. If you keep it exclusive for that one-off big announcement, then it makes sense. If you're going to do it every 3 months for something, then it's just a waste of time, effort, and money.
100%. I prefer calling people into the restaurant to actually try the food and give us their constructive feedback, criticism, whatever it is.
I think obviously F&B has become like a form of entertainment for people, so it's definitely getting eyeballs all around. What happens when there's a sort of PR crisis? So I want each of you to kind of tell me, something that's happened. You don't have to name the brand, obviously, but you can say enough so I can guess. I'm kidding.
That story is going to be for 24 hours. Of course, everyone's going to know about it, but it's already out there. There's nothing you can do to change it. It's a journalist. You cannot really tell them to do anything more because, that's their opinion. They're going to put it up. So you'll have to just let this pass. And then after that, whatever they're talking about, correct that and put that story out there. Just be a little more accepting versus being defensive, because nobody likes it when you're being defensive, especially when you're putting yourself out in the public. Accept it and be like, hey, okay, this was missing and we understand, and be honest, like we're launching, we're teething, there are issues, it happens, but we've changed this and we'd love for you all to give us a second chance. Yeah, absolutely. You have to own it, especially in the restaurant space. You can't be like, hey, but that's how we are. You can't do that.
No, but come on, like a big.
Yeah, like that's what I was saying.
She not do my clients being in jail and reading about it on the front page. So I've had to deal with next level crisis with like hundreds of messages and reading about my client being in jail on the front page.
You need to tell us who this is.
No. And then when the Kamla Mills fire happened, I think a lot of our brands got affected. And then like I've had multiple crises like that, either because of fire or because someone has come to a bar and seen a shot being named in a certain way, and then the restaurant is shut. So I've had to deal with all of this. Yeah, I'll tell you personally. Very close to home.
Definitely not on this wonderful podcast, Gauri. We're giving you a generic answer.
Listening, it's fine.
It's off the record.
But it's been, I mean, it's just because, like, at that point, like, one article in one publication, and it gets picked up in all the regional publications, and everything is just like in 200. And then you've got, like, the women morchas coming in and everything. So you have to deal with everything. And then when I had to get quoted, because I couldn't, like, none of the clients could put their names there, I've had like hate trails happening with she is a woman and how could she say this? I've had some very interesting crises too. These are everyday things about food and this, but this like
Your skin just gets thicker and thicker over time. And
Yeah, but you also honestly,
But everything passes.
We're all in this business of having working really well under pressure.
Yeah.
So this is something you gotta fight the fires when they come. Like you can't preempt this stuff, and you can't even fathom what comes your way. So you just have to figure it out.
Let's talk about our favorite subject, which is influencers. No, I mean, look.
I think there'll be a one-hour show only on this.
We're all evening.
And who else to have all the news on that but us?
Okay, so come on, tell me some dopes. What's like the worst behavior you've seen?
Oh God! Oh my God! We're gonna
Where
get
should
into
I
so much
start?
trouble. Tripti's the one who's being the most honest. She's gonna get into the most trouble after this.
She's not taking
No,
names.
come on, you're taking.
So it could be anybody.
No, so come on. Like, what is, it is something that it's the new media in a way.
So I've
obviously.
had influencers who've come and eaten like maybe for 5 or 6 people on a table of 2, and then packed food and taken
Yeah,
it.
this happens every week to me. Every
Like
week.
packed food and not even the leftover, like packed food
Extra.
for
For 5 more people. And they take for 5 more people.
Yes.
So it's like food for 10 on a table of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. This happens every week.
Clear on a few things here, clearly.
No, but in general,
make sure it doesn't happen at the table.
What do you do? Ban them.
At that moment, you can't.
Yeah, we have a very strict banning policy. Like, never again. Like, there's no second chance because it's our name on the line.
Yeah.
The clients won't trust us anymore.
Yeah.
So, and now we don't look at numbers because all the numbers are fake.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry, but
you can't
every
gauge.
single number is fake. Like, no one has so many followers or so little. Like, there are very few organic influencers. So now it's more about seeing their lifestyle, seeing their circle, rather than seeing their Instagram following.
See, I love influencers. Genuinely, I think the creator economy is amazing. I love that it's giving birth to like another way of showcasing your brand. I love it. But the only problem is who is an influencer today. That is the problem.
Everyone.
And secondly, the other problem is, so to me, the real influencers are normal people like us.
Yes.
Genuinely.
That's the point, right?
Normal people who are just going to go out for a dinner,
Same,
have a great
same.
meal, post about it. Like normal.
genuinely, like post out of like
People will come back and spend.
And absolutely. And the lesser the followers, the more genuine your friends and family are who are looking at your post and being like, oh, you bought this product, did it work for you? Okay, I'm going to go buy it. They are the real influencers today. And I'm not taking the credit away from the ones who have 1 million or 100K or 500K. There are many great, genuine ones, and we love working with them. It's a great way to showcase any brand, whether it's beauty, fashion, lifestyle, or F&B. But at the end of the day, the only problem with the influencer space now is that everybody thinks that they can become one just by putting on some great clothing and posting some brands and, showcasing some handbags and whatever. Everyone thinks that they can become one. So that process of weeding out on our part becomes harder and harder. I have a whole team now that just sits and does this. Literally, a team of 6 people who are only deciding who's an influencer and who's not to add to our database. That has become like the biggest process, whereas around COVID and right before COVID, you knew who the influencers were.
Yeah.
Now there's like this spurt of every person. You go to any building, there'll be 20 people there who say they're influencers. But they're bloggers. The real influencers are people with that kind of a circle, which I feel like will quickly buy what you post or will want to buy, and they'll be educated about that brand.
I feel that there's one thing to create brand awareness. So again, when we were talking about launching a brand,
Yeah.
and you use someone who's got a wide reach, however much it is, to sort of let people know that the brand exists now. But after that, when it comes to sort of people, and we've invited media to our restaurant. It's not like we haven't invited
Of course.
media, but after that, when you sort of have too much of people who will come invited and obviously very rarely speak openly about it on social media, is it really giving credibility to the establishment?
So a lot of them used to be honest and just giving them credit where it's due. But a lot of restaurants and PR agencies started banning the honest ones because they couldn't. They didn't want someone coming in who's
Nobody wants a
trashing.
negative review.
Yeah,
If you
no one
were
wants a
to get
negative
one,
review.
you don't want to invite the same person back
So
in.
this is on
That's fair.
restaurants.
Like, I wouldn't want someone who's
No
very
one does.
honest to come. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, come, by all means, come, like, pay, have a meal, and say
if
what
you
want,
pay
where-
for your
yeah.
meal, say whatever you want. But if I'm hosting you, then there is that little bit of a thing from the restaurateur that why are you criticizing my meal? Like you could have just come and told me that. Why are you putting it out there for
But then
a
isn't
billion
this
other people?
diluting the whole point?
So that's why there aren't too many food critics anymore. Everyone's just talking about, so they aren't saying, oh, it was amazing. Like if they don't like it, they're just giving you information about the restaurant. A lot of the reputed ones do that. No one is, like...
Opining.
Yeah. But I've also realized from their side, they aren't wrong because everyone wants to stay relevant. And if you start getting banned by restaurants, then how are you going to cover the next big launch?
Yeah.
So everyone's now balancing it out. I've actually not read a bad review in really long, even if they've had a bad experience. Like they'll just be subtle about it.
Very recently.
But it's very rare.
Yeah, it's
Like the numbers are very less. Earlier
Now I
it
feel
was
like it's going the other way where there's this need to be honest, to be taken seriously because there's been this, it's almost like this, wave
there's
that's
a
happened,
certain
right?
section,
Yeah.
very small, and that won't increase for this very reason because PR people and restaurateurs don't want anyone who's coming in and speaking
But I
badly.
think the consumer does, right? So you might actually get more engagement if you're being honest. And it doesn't mean that always say something negative to appear to be honest. But
But there are many food bloggers and critics and in food-based influencers who are very honest. They may not be at that particular point when they're consuming a meal, but later on when they're doing like their ask me any questions or whatever they're doing about food,
that
they will say, these are the restaurants I've dined at recently that let me down. These are the restaurants that I've loved a meal at. They are very honest. And also I feel like tomorrow if I send you a product and all three of us do, and when we send you something and you post and you say, thank you for sending me this. It's not an endorsement of the product. So
It's
same
just an
way,
acknowledgement.
It's not like you may not ever use
That,
it.
hey, this is this,
And
yeah.
and you may never use it. And you may not. If I
Not
send
like
you a
it.
beauty product and you're used to another beauty product, you may never even touch this one. But you're acknowledging it on Instagram. Same way, these food bloggers come in and they acknowledge the meal. Now, whether they loved it, didn't love it, they will give us that honest feedback, which we will relay to the chef, restaurateur, and all of that, and then try to put some mechanism in place to reflect their opinion. But also now you can't please everyone. You know this. Every item on the menu is not going to be to everyone's liking.
But I've also seen restaurants turning their food around completely after the
True.
first 3 months.
Yeah,
in a
true.
good way
That
because the first 3 months, everyone has teething
get all the
issues.
feedback.
You get all the feedback. You see what's working, not working. And I've seen restaurants doing a 360-degree turn. And then like people who didn't like it now are big fans. So I've also seen that.
Any like common mistakes you see chefs and restaurants doing that you really wish?
Yes.
So many.
The biggest one. So usually everyone does a big launch. A lot of people, not the seasoned players, they do a big launch, they see success, and then they stop the PR and marketing and social media. Like they don't pay attention anymore because they feel, oh, now we are doing well. It's just till the next new restaurant comes up, and then they dip really badly, and then to pick up the pieces again and restart the marketing. And I keep telling brands this. I'm like, it's okay, reduce your budget a little, but don't stop, because, you know, your one-on-one interaction with the media, you know, you have to stay in touch with them. So I know people who really deserve to be on maybe certain awards, etc. But because they've just gone silent because they're doing the numbers, now they aren't getting any of that. So to restart that becomes really hard. So that start, stop becomes very hard for restaurants. And I've seen a lot of restaurants die because of this.
Same. I think one major issue that the restaurateurs have is that when it comes to number crunching, what is the first thing you do? You cut your marketing budget.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, people are coming, I'm good, but then you just don't know what's around the corner, right? Because your month may be good, your next month may be good, but your third month may not be as good. So the whole point is, it's not about one great campaign or 20 articles in the first month.
100%.
It really is a consistent effort. Every brand today, not just hospitality, needs a PR agency for this reason. It is consistent. No brand is built in 1 month. If that was the case, everyone would be a big
Everyone
brand.
would do a launch
And everyone would be huge. Like, why are they all at different levels today? Because it's a sustained strategy.
Do you not sort of, you know, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate, but I'm not, because this is sort of a route we've taken,
Yeah.
where we've really kind of tried to own the PR and marketing ourselves, and I feel like it's kind of worked.
So I'll tell you, maybe just talking about you, you also put in a lot of effort into your relations, and
And
I've
hours.
seen you doing that over the years. Plus, when you started, of course, you've started an iconic restaurant like The Table. So you've also had the right kind of people coming in, which gave you a great base to start off with, and you kept building it on, and you have that energy to do that. Not everyone has the energy to do that, to maintain relations. For them to talk to a media person also has to be a push from our side. Also, one thing I always tell brands is, like, even if it's my own brand, right? Like, for details, I can never I'm overcritical. I can't post. I can't talk about my work much. I find it very hard because I'm overcritical. I'll overanalyze every word. But if I have to do it for your brand, I'll do it in like 30 seconds. So it's also about being too attached. Like you said, no one knows the brand as well as you. You're also over-attached to your brand. Sometimes you can't take the right decisions. You can't think logically, which is why you need an agency. Yeah, it's about having a fresh perspective. And this happens across the board with all our brands. They're too attached and they need a third person pushing them to do certain things or taking certain decisions, because they're also in the middle of juggling like 10 different roles. So how do you do that? And more than that, the media finds it very hard.
Yeah.
They find it very hard to coordinate with like 50 different people.
Yeah.
For them, it's easier to, just get in touch with an agency who will then put them on to 10 different clients.
Yeah.
Just yesterday I got a call and, she's like, can you just do this for me? I mean, I know the chef, but it's too much for me to coordinate with 20
Yeah.
people. Can you just do it for these, 4-5 chefs? And I was like, yeah, of course. So it's also that convenience from a media point of view. And how would a restaurateur know what's happening on an everyday basis? What kind of stories are being worked on?
Yeah.
What are the new collaborations?
You
or the cool
definitely
things
win
that are
when you
happening?
have more, and I think this is something that restaurateurs also don't know and should know, that you definitely win when you have an agency with multiple brands in the hospitality space, because there's just so much going on. You can collaborate, you can use something that someone else is doing and be like, okay, this is a good story, I want this restaurant to be a part of it, and you can like put together a lot more. Some of our brands, and this has happened to us a lot, where we've had like restaurateurs be like, why are you working with so many restaurants? Like, why can't you just work with all
I was
ours?
gonna ask you that, like, isn't there ever a sort of consideration of like a conflict of interest in a way, like especially if it's a similar cuisine in the same city? Do you ever get asked that by like your clients?
So it's like having twins. Even if they are identical twins, they have different personalities.
But I have had a restaurant that has come to me and said that you cannot take this particular restaurant because we feel that there is major competition between us. And so when that restaurant came to us, we did not take them on because there was already this in place. And that's
That I've done
okay.
for years.
I've done that
I've had a
as well, yeah.
clause
If it's a
in a whole Asian category. You know this. I've had a clause for years, which blocked me in the Asian category. But then I think it also takes a while to realize that okay, you can trust your agency and for for us to get that clause off.
Because I think as a restaurateur, the perspective is that, if you had to pitch one of your clients in this space for something,
Right.
who would you pick, right?
And you can give two options to a journalist and then
pick.
make it their problem to pick. So that's usually how it happens.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the end of the day, there will always be, there could be one particular brand that is the perfect fit for this article, and that's the brand that's going to get it. Old, new, recent, whatever it may be, if that brand deserves that story, they're going to get that story.
The media is very clear.
The
with
media is
that.
also clear that, this is a better fit for me and this is what I'm going to take.
And they won't take that input if it's not relevant. So even if I want to push the other client, they'll be like, no, but this is relevant for me, so I'm going to take this. So it's not like we control like everything. Eventually, it's in the media's hand.
So I don't know if you know this, but this whole season that we're doing of Speak Crazy was actually triggered by this Instagram post that went out a
chefs.
few months ago, where they highlighted, I think, 6 or 7 male chefs and said that, this is the route to becoming a successful chef. And point is, there was no female representation. And, I've never sort of said that, there has to be like women, this, that. But the fact that there were none was just shocking given where we are today.
Yeah.
And there are some incredible women in our industry, whether it's chefs, restaurateurs, you guys. So I want to talk about you guys because you all have kids under 10. I have just passed that mark with my daughter. But tell me your experience, each of you, starting with Tripti, how you balance that. Has that been a challenge? Have you had to make work sacrifices or family sacrifices? We've all had to do it, but how have you navigated that space?
So I think when Kayan was born, I got back to work immediately.
So how old is he?
He's now 5.
Okay.
But he was a newborn, I was feeding, but I still had to do events. So then I kept checkpoints. So if I had a Lower Parel, Worli meeting, I had a family house there. Like basically my sister-in-law's house. I knew if it's a Bandra event, this is the house I'm going to be in. If it's a Jew event, I'll be at my mom's house. So that helped me just be close to him, like at a 10-minute radius. Now it's about not trying to do it all. So you have to deal with the mommy guilt. But I have fixed timings with him. So there are certain things and certain timings in the morning and certain things that I do, like school pickup, school drops, getting him ready, putting him to sleep, and then I go back to work. So I have these fixed things which I try to do on most days. So I know those are my dedicated timings with him, and over and above that, whatever else I can do. And on all holidays, we try to do as many vacations as possible and try to spend quality time. So I feel more than the time that you spend, I think whatever little time that you spend or whatever time you have, it's about making the most of it and doing something constructive or doing something where you're giving your child, your entire attention. It does. You don't have to be with them the entire day, but when you're doing something, do something meaningful.
Do you feel the need to be at every event, for your clients? Is that something that your clients expect? Is that something that, and especially as all of you all are growing, your portfolios and have more of all of this happening and, offline's becoming as important as online. How do you navigate that, knowing that, yes, you do want to spend time with, and weekends, right? In our industry, weekends are the worst in terms of all of this.
So I think, my son is going to be 10 this year, and he has been with me through all of it, through the build, through the struggle, through everything. So I feel like he's never seen me not work in the last 10 years. And I think, yes, there is, to answer your question, there's definitely the pressure of having to attend everything and be everywhere, because that's just the industry we're in. But you have to, and obviously now I can say this because it's been so many years that I've been in this space, and now I can say that I'm sorry, but I can't attend this, X, Y, Z, right? Initially I was like trying to be everywhere, doing it all. Okay, clients asking, let me try and go there. But now I put like clear boundaries. But mom guilt is real. It's going to pervade till the end of time. I'm never going to get rid of it. And I made my peace with it now. Initially, it was a lot.
What about you? How was your experience?
So for me, it was difficult.
How old is your...
3.5. She's still very, very young, and she's just about understood that, okay, mama goes to work and this is how it is. And she was born in the middle of COVID, right in the middle of COVID. We were figuring out, just suddenly like revenue cuts and just figuring out what to do next. And then, you know, I was pregnant at that time. So it was really difficult. But what I did was that I kind of, you know, created an ecosystem that could help me get through to this. I got seniors in place. I got them more comfortable client facing and do all of that. I prepared my clients. Because at that time, the clients who were there stuck around because it was COVID. So nobody wanted to like really shift too much. I said, look, this is the thing, I'm pregnant. You know, so you'll have to just understand. And again, like I was feeding her, so that whole process was something. So similar like Tripti's, like I used to have these like different houses. If I had to go for a meeting, I'll feed her, keep her there, go for the meeting. There have been times where I've got a call from my sister, she's woken up, she's crying, you need to leave and come now. And I was just like, okay, I'm coming, and somehow I would wrap up and just come back running. And she's howling away. So those moments are tough. You know, those moments have been really, really tough. But we managed through, and one thing I did was like, you know, I used to tell her from a very young age that, see, your mama is a working mama. But it's only about now where she's understood and she's like, I know you have to go to office. She'll still negotiate. Don't go today, no. You should never go to office, mama. Don't ever go to office. And I'm just like, no, it doesn't work like that.
You know, I mean, I think it's pretty much the same across the board. It's using all the sort of, you know,
It's a village.
The village.
Yeah,
It's
it takes a village.
Being organized.
Yeah.
And I think also very importantly, having a team that you learn to delegate to,
Yeah.
and you learn to like, you know, cede that control to.
Yeah, give up control,
Because
yeah.
as entrepreneurs, I know we're all control freaks.
Yeah.
And also, you know, for clients to understand that, right? In my case as well, you know, it like, even though I'm not necessarily, it's not a one-on-one equation with our guests, but you know, for them to understand that you can speak to so-and-so and they'll sort of help you out. You don't have to always reach out to me, but it's absolutely true. And also I think, at least to the extent it was possible with me, I always took Dia with me where I could. You know, so
I take her for meetings. I took her for a meeting to a cafe. I said, she had a Magna tiles. I said, you sit there, you do.
Yeah.
I'm doing my meeting. I can't talk to you right now. Wait for half an hour. I'll come there. So she made a Magna tile after I was done. She's like, can I show a client my Magna tile? I said, please show them. And I mean, she understood and she feels more included in my life when all this happens.
I take him for my events also. And I tell him, okay, now, you know, if it's a kid-friendly event, I'm like, let's call your friends and let's make it a thing.
Same.
And this is your event, Kayan. So, you know, he gets really excited about it. But I also feel that what's really important is if you want to make something work, like if you want to balance your work and your family life, you'll figure a solution out. And everyone has a different way of figuring it out. But I think everyone does well in the end.
I think it's also, you know, due credit where credit's due. It's like our husbands have to.
I was just
support
going to say, you have to have really good
Have to have
supportive
the best
partners.
husbands.
But I am going to ask you, because, you know, I mean, this is something I go through, even though I work with my husband, which, I mean, you do to some extent.
I do
but
too.
I
know
do
you
not.
don't.
I don't.
But in spite of that, where we're spending all day together, and they say that you can only do 2 out of 3 things at any, or you can only be good at 2 out of 3 anytime, which is like either being a wife, a daughter, or a mother, and you know, it's not really possible to do all at once and satisfy. And then, I mean, you're not even in that. You yourself are not in that equation. But do you ever find that as being like, especially when you're working? And obviously, your child is your priority. How do you deal with that aspect? Because I think that's something that, you know, we always hear questions about dealing with, you know, the mommy guilt part of that.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with the sort of husband in this
Guilt,
situation?
husband guilt.
Is there any such thing?
There is. So I honestly, like earlier, I used to try and do everything. Like I used to do like, you know, contribute at home and then try and spend time with Anoop and then like do like obviously my meetings and all, and I used to burn out completely. And that's when I realized you can't do it all.
Yeah.
So basically then I gave up like doing what I used to do at home as much. And then now I spend all my time either at work and then dedicated Anoop time and then dedicated Kayan time. But it's still not what it used to be, you know, pre-baby. But then what we do now is because he's older, we try and take vacations alone. Then we can spend some quality time. So like I said, it's not about how much time you spend, but it's also the quality of the time you spend.
Yeah.
And in my head, when, like honestly, every day gets overwhelming because it's morning to late in the night. So I just imagine myself playing a video game. I'm part of a video game, and these are my obstacles. And now, okay, I have to do this. Okay, I'm done. Done with my shower, done with this meeting. Now, next step, next step. So that's how I, in my head, to not have a breakdown, I'm like, this is part of a video game. I'm part of a game, and now this is how I'm going to navigate the day. So that's how I do it. And I'm sure everyone has their own way of, kind of doing it.
Jay and I made a plan to, and there's so many restaurants opening and things. So we said, okay, let's do date night once a week and we'll go somewhere.
Yeah.
And, like not like as part of a sort of PR event or whatever. We'll just go, and we've not done a single.
We did that
Actually
too.
did
We
that.
never ended up
We started
going.
the date night, and we both dive. So we decided, like, we used to dive before baby. And one thing, my husband was like, I don't want to lose you in this process. So he was like, the diving doesn't stop. So when I was feeding her, I think she was just 9 months old. We had gone on a dive trip, and I was pumping and I carried everything with me. But he's like, no, we have to make it happen. So we go diving every year. Like that 1 week, he's like, no, you have to make it happen. I don't care, whatever it takes. So yeah, so we have this common thing that we both really enjoy: food and diving. So like we do this once a month date night. Once a week doesn't happen.
Yeah, once a week. I was like, that's really ambitious.
Once a
Well,
month.
clearly, it's like not even happened once in 6 months.
We also tried it. We set a day where like every Thursday we'll go, and then there was some event every Thursday
yeah. Once
that
a
came in the way, and I was like, forget it, it's not
Once a
happening.
month happens. Once a month is very doable. So once a month we go out and we do these like dive holidays where it's
Okay,
just
maybe
the two of
after
us.
this episode,
You're gonna
we will
set a
revise
new
that attempt.
set a new goal.
But okay, you guys have an insight into the industry, obviously. Why is it that there's so much focus on, male chefs and restaurateurs, and there's just, or it's the same 2-3 women who keep getting featured. I know I'm sort of one of them, and I really I get bored of doing it myself because I'm just like, there's so many other, newer, fresher faces that have as amazing, if not better, stories to share.
Yeah.
Why do you think the media is not picking up
It's
on
called
this?
PR. I think whoever, honestly, I feel the same, but I also feel whoever has the strongest PR, and it's a lot of effort, not only from the agency, but also from the individual itself, to maintain that relationship constantly. So people who understand it, like I know you understand the importance of this, I've worked with you. I know those people keep getting featured constantly, and because it's top of mind recall. So it's also, you're featured in 3 articles, for example, and then everyone's reading about that, and then the next person who's writing an article, those people are top of mind recall. So it's just like a circle which doesn't end. So the next person who comes in has to have those PR skills. So everyone, for example, I remember a lot of people used to come and tell me, I want to be Pooja Dhingra.
Yeah.
Make me Pooja Dhingra. And I'm like, you have no idea the kind of effort she takes, the relationships she keeps. You can't just become a Pooja Dhingra with PR. It's a lot of effort from the individual itself. It's not only about, getting written about, but it's also about gaining that respect and gaining that credibility, which comes with a lot of work and a lot of time that you have to sacrifice maybe in your personal life to do that in your first few years to reach a certain position.
So what would you advise a chef or a restaurateur in terms of, a female chef or a restaurateur in terms of how they can navigate this space and make a mark for themselves?
I think you have to get that story right. I think you have to position it properly and strategically so that the media wants to A, entertain that person, B, the product has to be amazing, right? For them to want to put interest in this.
I'm sorry, it's not, right? But they're still getting the limelight.
Fair enough, but it's
just
very
a-
subjective. It is.
It's
Because
changed.
today I will like
just a
something, you
change.
won't, she will like it. It's just, it's very subjective.
It's
So-
about who's the hottest person
But how do you
being
become
spoken
the hottest person?
with PR. With PR, as
No,
in.
I understand.
But I
but-
also think that it
Being
is an
seen in the right
innate
places.
part of their personality
Yeah,
to
that's-
get
exactly.
there. Like some of the names we're mentioning, like Pooja, she has it in her. That's her personality.
No, so she does
you
put
have it in
herself
you.
out there. I know, I agree. I've had sort of other women restaurateurs when I'm on a panel, they're like, oh my god, I don't want to go there and speak in front of, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like this. It's like you're having a
Yeah.
conversation. It's not something that you're putting yourself on. A spotlight on yourself, but there is a lot of inhibition. So one thing I know for a fact is that we also have to come out of our shells.
Yeah, you have to,
Put yourself
but it
out
has to
there.
come from you. And I think that there's certain personality types who just have it in them to like meet someone and charm them. And of course, like I said, product has to be good for journalists at large. Now there is a cult mentality. There is definitely like a fan favorite. I can name 4 of them, but I won't. I can name 4 restaurants that just get featured all the time. And maybe the food is good to some people. I personally don't like 2 of the 4, but somebody else does. So clearly they have become a fan favorite. And once one media does it, the other picks it up. And that cult mentality exists. But that being said, it can be broken. You can make a mark. Every young chef can make a mark. It's just going to take a lot longer to get there because now there's a lot of noise. Like there's 100 restaurants opening every week, right? So there's a lot of noise. So to break that clutter and come out, A, you need strong PR. B, you need to be that personality that's impressive
That's
enough
very
to them. And C, definitely everything you do helps. So whether it's speaking on panels or putting yourself out there on social media, or in some cases just being at every networking event, it just depends on what's working for that person. So there's
It has
no
to be a
one
mix of
cookie cutter
everything.
strategy. I think it has to be based on that personality type. But obviously, I mean, I would say if your product is good, the chef should get recognition. That's the basis of it. But it's taking longer now in today's day and age versus 10 years ago when, you started the table, more than 10. Because at the time, there were lesser restaurants that lasted that long.
Yes.
They all shut down or went out of business relatively soon. Whereas the ones that persisted, they're like stalwarts now. Like you.
I mean, one thing I've always said to people when they've asked me, like, how do you sort of put yourself out there and I always said that in the first few years, just be a media whore. Like, take whatever sort of publicity you're getting.
And you
do it,
build
be
those
in the media.
relations.
Yeah, like do it because it might feel like, oh my God, like it's the same thing, or is this publication worth it, or is this like, but just do it because that's how you sort of start putting yourself out there. And I do hope that like media also, and I'll probably get beaten up for saying this, but like there's less lazy about their research, right? And it's not just about the whatever clickbait or the thing that's just gonna the social media reach or whatever, but there's a genuine interest in fresh faces and what's actually sort of the next wave in this industry.
I also feel that from a media point of view, the same way the restaurant doesn't want to rub anyone off the wrong way, any important journalist, I think even from a journalist's point of view, they don't want to rub the known people or the people who are mentioned the wrong way. So that also could be one of the reasons why, all the big people are always mentioned, because they don't want to keep them out of lists and then get banned. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, I guess I never thought of it like that, but I think that, it's
You have to
also
think
about
of it from
coming,
both.
I think it's just being a little, I don't know if woke is the right word, but just being aware that like it is a changing dynamic and it's no longer a male-dominated industry. I think a lot of amazing insight from all of you, and not enough dope, but a lot of amazing insight and learning, I'm sure, for people who are, thinking about getting into the industry, or, how to navigate this sort of growing space of media noise in a way, because it is more and more challenging. So we're going to shift to something a little lighter and more fun. But I am going to ask a question. It's now the rapid fire. I'm going to ask a question. Say the first thing that comes to your mind, and this applies to each of you. So,
Oh God.
okay, a client you want to steal from your peers.
Is it from
Anyone.
Okay.
It could be from someone
Okay.
here or...
Book My Show, and Accessorize maybe. Yeah.
I mean, you have to name multiple. Like, yeah.
Just Book My Show.
Yeah.
She's stealing my client.
Yeah.
I would, so if I don't have to choose just hospitality, I can choose anything that I would want.
I guess, but I'm...
I would love to, okay, the word steal, I would never steal. I would never steal from anybody.
Love to work with.
Yeah, a client I
That's
would
a manifest
love.
now.
Okay,
Yeah,
can I
manifest.
say change mine if it's
Okay,
not
fine.
about the
Okay,
Don't say
change the
mine.
question.
bougie.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, she's given you a hospitality one.
Yeah.
I would love to work with Nykaa.
Yeah.
I would. Oh, this is tough. Like too many options out there. So if I had to pick one, I think I would love to work maybe with Surya Gar.
Okay.
at Jaisalmer.
Nice.
Okay. Your biggest peeve when it comes to clients?
Wanting personal time from me. I mean, like, just the, want to check things with me constantly, despite the team having already done multiple calls or meetings or whatever. They want a final, sort of go ahead from me. I want less, like, dependence on me.
I don't know how this one's gonna sound, but wanting everything for free, like
Oh,
us,
yeah.
we want everything. No,
Big
we
one.
don't want to pay. We want it for free. We want everything for free, and I'm just so tired of listening to that. And I'm like, please, everything cannot be free. So yeah, I'm just putting it out there.
I think mine would be sometimes like if I'm not around, like talking badly to the team.
Yeah.
I think that's just
not cool.
the biggest,
Worst.
the worst thing that can happen. Whether it's their team, my team, anyone. Like I just think like talking down to people in public is just,
Yeah.
and it happens. It's not like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay. A viral client or a client who pays on time?
A client who pays on time.
Same.
I'm putting it
A
out
client
there.
who pays on time.
Always,
For sure.
always.
I think we're all on the same page. A
I
client
was
who pays on
expecting you all
time.
to say the other
I
thing.
think
No.
Work our hands,
Viral,
speak-
viral.
Viral
always
client who
happen.
pays, yes. No problem.
But
A viral campaign or a client,
a
yeah.
client who pays on time. Please
Okay,
work.
clearly this is like a...
It's a very
No, trust
sensitive
me,
topic.
it's a topic we've like discussed
Yes.
at length, and we know what
There's
we
a
what we
lot
go
of
through.
PTSD. It's,
You don't have a black book of like...
Oh, we do.
I do. You know how you do a reference check of like an employee?
I think there should be.
Now I started doing a reference check of clients. It's literally that way.
Restaurants, are you listening? Yeah. No, fair. I think that's a smart thing to do rather than get your fingers burned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
one PR myth you'd like to debunk?
Women in PR can be happily married. When I got into PR, everyone said you're never going to get married because at that point, none of the owners of PR companies were married. They still aren't. But hopefully, I'll change that.
I think there's a misconception that once you come to a PR agency, you basically, in 3 months, you gotta rake it in and you gotta be featured in a Vogue and you gotta be here and you gotta be there. If everyone could do that with a PR agency, then what would be the need for a PR agency after 3 months or 6 months or whatever? That's not how it works. So I think that's the biggest thing, that then when they come to you, so, oh my God, you did this for this one? Yeah, we want exactly the same thing. We want a Vogue and we want this and we want that. And I'm like, this is not the client for us, if that's the expectation. We want someone who wants to build their brand in a sustained manner, which is the right way to do PR.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get a cover feature in the first 3 months.
I mean, it depends
maybe
on who
never.
you are. It depends on who you are and what your story is. But typically, a client coming to you asking for that is not probably going to get featured.
Yeah. Assuming that, it's PR and it's just money spent, then there's nothing that's going to come out of it. And I don't know why some brands just assume that, oh no, nothing will come out of it. And you have to have that patience to actually see what comes out of it. So some people are just like, oh, nothing's going to happen with PR. We need to put everything on like performance marketing and put money here and put money there. PR can't do anything. Like, oh no, this print article can't do anything. And that's just something people need to realize that that's not true. It can do a lot for your brand. Just have the patience to like let it work.
Fair. Do you still order on Swiggy from your ex-clients?
Yes.
100%.
All of them.
100%.
Yeah. I'm so used to that.
Maybe not the blacklisted ones, but everyone else,
for
yes.
sure. Not the
No,
blacklisted ones.
there's no hard feelings in this game. You can't have, you have to have a thick skin.
Yeah.
Because today they're with you, tomorrow they're not, and that's totally fine. That's the way it works. So, no hard feelings. Food is good, we're going to order it.
Yeah, it's the food that we're looking at. That doesn't matter where it's coming from.
I think that's been the moral of the story pretty much throughout this conversation, is that it comes down to the product and the
Yeah.
product. So
Yeah.
it'll take you really far. And then, of course, we have you three lovely ladies and lots more actually in this industry.
Yeah.
Are doing a fantastic job of, helping restaurants who navigate this space, because, our sort of strength is in the hospitality,
Yeah.
the F&B part of it, and this is where you guys really come in. So, but kudos to you. I mean, you all were top of mind when I wanted to put together a list of people to talk to, and so you've obviously
Thank you.
made your mark.
Thank
in
you.
Whatever sort of long, short period that you've been doing this, so that's incredible, and yeah, and good luck in this
Thank you.
booming industry, and lots more. And I hope you get all your clients that you manifested.
Thank you so
But
much.
anyway,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for having us. This was fun. A lot of fun.